Now we've got 5 minutes to ask some great questions from these high-powered lawyers. I swear you won't get a bill at the end of the day, so please take advantage.
Hi, my name is Michael Richmond, and I'm doing some freelance writing. So here's my question. And I haven't heard anybody discuss the question about growers in terms of transporting product to pharmacies and so forth. Could somebody that's familiar with the Washington state laws and the new law here address that question? Thanks.
I guess that's it. You know, one of the things I learned in law school, one of the first things was not to try to make things clearer than they really are. And that really applies to our marijuana laws. But under the medical marijuana laws, what you can grow is what you can possess, and you can possess it in your grow room or in your car or in your bathroom or wherever you choose to possess it, other than in public. Now, I suppose inside the car, inside a van while you're transporting it is not in public and it's legitimate. But I think the maximum number of plants that can ever be in one place at one time appears to be 45, and that's got to be a collective community grow of at least 3 people. Now, there are some who say that you can put more than one community grow in the same tax parcel, the same residence, the same address. And that may well be, but it certainly would make sense to have them divided into groups of 45 at least, and possibly in separate rooms. That's not clear. But does that answer your question?
Guys, we've got time for one more question, and then I'm going to ask this panel to go down to the Knowledge Hut so they can answer your questions in more detail.
Hi, I'm Gene Brandon from Port Townsend. Are there any countries that are doing, better on this than we are?
Portugal.
Portugal has completely removed the criminal aspect of this. They're taking a public health aspect, so even if you get caught with repeated drug use, you don't go before a police panel or a judge. It's not like a drug court. You go before civil authority to be able to decide whether your use is problematic or not, and then a course of action is taken from there, either released or treatment is recommended. And so we see a real public health approach.
And that's not just for cannabis, that's for all controlled substances. Personal use quantities of all controlled substances. In Oregon, I work also with the Oregon Criminal Defense Lawyers Association. We had a bill in the legislature to defelonize it, to make it, under certain circumstances, misdemeanor, certainly expungible. The biggest problem is a young person who gets arrested and convicted of a personal use quantity of heroin or of ecstasy or of some Schedule I controlled substance can't ever get it off their record. I can tell you, I spoke some with Jill Harris, who is here. She's the Assistant Director of the Drug Policy Alliance, and implementing Portugal-style defelonization, decriminalization of personal use quantities is a main project that they're working on.
Canada and the U.S. is increasingly isolated in the Americas as well. We've got a number of South and Central American states that have depenalized or decriminalized the use of all cocaine, hallucinogens, etc. And so we are the exception and not the rule right now in international drug prohibition. Closing words, guys, 30 seconds of wisdom. What can these guys do to help you? I've always said when I started a dispensary, every action I took is to help my lawyer win the court case when we ended up there. So what can these guys do?
All right. Getting back to the not talking to the cops. I ask my clients, why do you talk to the cops? And I hear 2 reasons. 1, they're worried the cops will get suspicious. 2, they're worried what it'll look like to the jury if they didn't talk. Well, let me tell you, if the cop is already questioning to you, guess what? He's already suspicious. That boat has sailed. Now, as far as worrying about what it looks like to a jury, they're not allowed to tell the jury that you invoked your Fifth Amendment rights. So if the cop gets on the stand and the DA says, did you ask questions? Yes, I did. And did he answer? No.
When you're driving your car, you better not, if you're breaking the traffic laws, you better not be breaking the drug laws. Okay, and that's really the most important thing I can tell you to keep you out of trouble. The other one is, I call it the 2-step. When you're approached by a cop, he wants to talk to you. Mr. Steinborn, I'd like to talk to you. You say, what's this about? No matter what he says. He may say, well, listen, this is about, I want to search the moon for green cheese. No matter what he says or she says, you say, I guess I better talk to my lawyer. Thanks, folks.
Great advice. Thank you very much. And the breaking one law at a time, if you're running a dispensary or anything like that, that is a rule that you need to remember. If you see another medical marijuana dispensary busted with mushrooms or LSD in it, that really, really, really takes away from our cause and our case. Leland?
I really can't add anything to what Jeff or Bill said, but I always, when I speak at HempFest, and I did when I spoke yesterday, share two things that I learned from Jack Hare. And the first is that marijuana is not going to re-legalize itself. If you're not registered to vote, register to vote. Get involved on these initiatives. But if you know, frequently in Oregon, I encounter people who say, well, I can't vote, I'm a felon. I don't know what the law is in Washington or California, but in Oregon, the only time a felon can't vote is when he or she is actually physically in custody. If they're told by their PO that they can't vote, I say, do you think that's the first time they lied to you? The second thing is it the same? Bill says it's the same in California, same in Washington?
It's not clear. They just threw the whole law because the Washington criminal justice system is so racist that it deprives minority of the right to vote. So it's not clear how things work in Washington right now.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because you can't talk about drug prohibition without talking about racism. The whole thing is founded on racism. The other thing Jack used to say is that people will spend $20, $30, $40, $400 for a bag of weed and won't rub 2 dimes together for drug policy reform. And I see the what do you call it? The collection fair,
cannabis fair,
donation fair. Here, the hemp fest is its insurance went up. I read from $15 to $19 million, and there's additional $17,000 just to pay the insurance payment on that. Each year, there isn't going to be another year unless you drop some. And I'm not talking. I hear a lot of jingle jangle. I'm talking about folding money, and I'm talking about money with more than 1 digit on it. And it needs to, if you put in 10 when you come in, put in 10 when you go out. Really, this is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful event. It doesn't happen anywhere else on the planet, I don't think. And it's not going to continue to happen unless you personally kick down some money. Thank you very much.
$10.
Thanks,
That's one
Lee.
joint. $10.
Much love, Lee. Much love. Charlie, give us some good words of wisdom on closing this out. And then John will take us home as our honored guest from Canada.
The laws are changing all the time, and that's a great question. What are the rules about transporting medical marijuana in the state of Washington now that the laws have changed? The answer is unclear. The answer is marijuana needs to be made legal for everyone so that you don't have to guess what's going to happen when you get arrested. There will be no arresting. That's the goal.
Right on. Thank you very much, Charlie, and thanks for being here today. John, close us up as our foreign visitor.
Well, the most important thing now from a Canadian's point of view is that you do something to change your laws down here. For a while it looked like we were going to change things, and that would have presumably had some influence in terms of the U.S. I was at a conference recently, and there was a U.S. professor who told me that just getting your federal government to change the law isn't good enough. And others on this panel will know more about this than me, but apparently the federal government gives your state governments all kinds of grants in order to prosecute people. And so there has to be a huge focus on your state governments to get them to stop accepting those grants, I suppose it is, or somehow stopping the feds from having that grant program, because even if you get rid of your federal prosecutions, you're still going to have your state prosecutions. But whatever you can do here in the U.S. to get rid of prohibition and come up with a reasonable approach to this and other issues, that will only benefit Canada. So put up money, get involved, become activists. That's my advice. And exercise your right to remain silent.
My friends, pray you don't need a good lawyer, but thank God they are here when we need them. So up here, thank you so much for all the hard work you guys do. I'm going to ask you all to please just spend a few minutes at the knowledge tent. So people with personal problems, a few people have come up to me and said, I want to talk to you, but I can't talk about it in public. A few people?
So I can't do it, but I'll see you.
Excellent, excellent.